Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Stephen Van Einstein. Thank y'all for joining me as we go through the 5th chapter of James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh, and have a conversation about it. I hope you all had the opportunity to go ahead and hear the reading from last weekend, where I went through and I just read the chapter Thought Factor in Achievement, I believe is the full title. Yeah, the Thought Factor in Achievement. And got to hear what we're going to be talking about today. It's a fantastic chapter. There's a lot of great stuff in it. This whole book's fantastic. You've heard me say that on every single one of these, to be fair. But I really enjoy it. I think y'all will too. So make sure you go ahead, give us a like and a subscribe on the YouTube channel. Give us a like on the Facebook podcast. Give us a listen. Let us know what you think. Okay, we're on Spotify as well as Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. So I hope y'all enjoy it. And just as a heads up, I hurt my shoulder. So if you see me doing some stuff like this, that's just me adjusting while we do this. I don't want to do the editing on it, and I prefer to do it in just one take. It seems more authentic when I do it that way. So, that's how I've always done it. So, here we go. This is the 5th chapter of James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh, and it's called The Thought Factor in Achievement. So, last week we did Thought on Purpose. Hold on a second. Thought and Purpose is how he titled it. And now this is talking about achievements, the actual achievements we get in life. Purpose is direction. Purpose is where you're headed, things like that. Achievement is the actual actions that you take along the way, right? So I'm excited to get into this one. There's a lot of great stuff. A little bit of touchy stuff in this chapter too. There's some stuff that some people might not like that much. And it comes up quick in the chapter, so we'll get to it. But the thought factor in achievement. His first paragraphs always give some great information. And this one, the first sentence of this first paragraph, all that a man achieves and all that he fails to achieve is the direct result of his own thoughts. I mean, he's putting it on there pretty heavy, right? Because that understanding that everything that we achieve, everything we don't achieve is completely on us and our thoughts, and it's our responsibility. We can't sit here and blame the world. We can't blame our circumstances, our upbringing, anything. It's up to us to take control. It's up to us to take responsibility and accountability for our thoughts so we can end up achieving the things we want to achieve. You know, that's a huge thing to be able to come into contact with. Excuse me. So that first sentence really is putting the sole responsibility and onus on us. You know, if there's things in your life that haven't gotten done, that's your fault. That's your thinking's fault. And you control your thinking. You guide your thinking. You're the one that decides what you put in your mind and what comes in the thoughts you think about, the thoughts you choose to dwell on. So, the first sentence, all that a man achieves and all he fails to achieve is the direct result of his own thoughts. It's pretty powerful. And he talks about how in a justly ordered universe where loss of equipoise, which is balance, would mean total destruction, individual responsibility must be absolute. So, meaning, this world has to be balanced. So the cause and effect has to be balanced. So the effect that you're receiving is in due amount to the cause that you've put in. If that makes sense. So he goes here, a man's weakness and strength, purity and impurity are his own and not another man's. And they are brought about by himself and not another. And they can only be altered by himself and never another. So many people, including myself at the beginning of my spiritual journey and at the beginning of this whole change in life, in pursuit of life, I really thought I just had to find the one person that was going to help me get to where I needed to go, or the right circumstances to get there. I was constantly waiting for life to line up the way I needed it to line up. And the reality is that's never going to work. Or that you're relying on random chance at best for something to happen for you. For me. And it never worked out. So this statement here, a man's weakness and strength, purity and impurity, are his own and not another man's. You can't put this on anyone else. Again, this is your responsibility. Mine is my responsibility. They are brought about by himself and not by another, and they can only be altered by himself, never another. No one else can fix you. You can't fix anyone else. Remember that. You cannot fix anybody. I do not have an understanding or an expectation doing these that I will fix anybody. The only thing that can happen is if someone is willing to listen to these things and then apply the principles that are talked about, and they change themselves with the help of the God of their understanding, the power greater than themselves, whatever that looks like for that individual. So remember this. Everybody, if you are responsible for your own, I'm responsible for my own. And anybody you want to help is responsible for their own too. His suffering and his happiness are evolved from within. As he thinks, so he is. As he continues to think, so he remains. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Think the same, get the same. Remember that. If you keep getting the same things in your life, if you keep dating the same person, you get the same coworkers, if you get the same type of bosses, the common denominator is always you. For me, the common denominator was always me. I had to change the way I thought, and then I started getting different results. Okay? This mic is pretty active today. Sorry about that. A strong man cannot help a weaker unless the weaker is willing to be helped. So you have to be open to these things, right? Like I was saying, I can only hope to guide somebody through the work that they themselves have to do. Because the level of honesty it takes to actually change and embrace that change comes from the individual. I can't tell you things about yourself. I can't make the honesty show up. You have to be willing to be honest, open-minded, and go through these things. And even then, the weak man must become strong himself. We have to do our own work. We have to do our own heavy lifting. That's what we're talking about. We must do this for ourselves. You must do this for yourself. We might give you, excuse the back, a set of instructions. We might give you some guidance on where to look or how to do it, but you've got to do it. We can't sit here and just tell you about yourself. Now, none but himself can alter his condition. I was the only one that could alter my life. People could have tried, people could have do this, but to actually change my life and take it into the direction I wanted it to be taken in, I was the only one. It was just me. No one else could do it. A lot of people tried. Never worked. Now, I said in the beginning here, we were going to have there might be a part of this that is very, how do you say it? Potentially controversial. I'll just go into it because the lesson in it is a good lesson to know, right? It has been usual for men to think and to say, many men are slaves because one is an oppressor. Let us hate the oppressor. Now, however, there is amongst an increasing few a tendency to reverse the judgment and to say, one man is an oppressor because many are slaves. Let us despise the slaves. Okay. So he's just talking about two ends of a interaction, right? Two sides of a coin, the slaves and then the oppressor, right? The truth is that the oppressor and slave are cooperators in ignorance. And while seeming to afflict each other, are in reality afflicting themselves. A perfect knowledge perceives the action of law in the weakness of the oppressed and the misapplied power of the oppressor. A perfect love, seeing the suffering which both states entail, condemns neither. A perfect compassion embraces both oppressor and oppressed. Now, what he's saying here is both ends of that spectrum, the slave and the slave master, the slave and the oppressor, right? We could put these in modern terms, even like politicians and the people underneath it. We're talking about employers, big employers and employees, right? There's a lot of different ways to be able to illustrate this. This is the one he chose for the time period he was in. And I believe it conveys the message perfectly, right? They're both, the slaves and the oppressor are connected, right? There's not one better than the other. The oppressor needs the slaves need the oppressor, right? It's all in the thinking and the mentality. And then we should have compassion for both, because one without the other causes a shift in the balance. And what he's saying here, we will stay slaves if we do not change our thinking. And we will stay oppressors if we do not change our thinking too. Because both are misguided, both are not thinking or given the opportunity sometimes to think in different ways. And that can be a little bit hard. It can be a little bit hard to actually stomach that, right? Now, that doesn't mean they deserve it in the sense of like to be exploited, but it's the situation that occurred and occurs in a lot of dynamics. It occurs in the dynamics of relationships all the time. There's an abuser and someone that is abused, and it seems as though the abuser always finds people to abuse, and the person that is abused always finds people to abuse them. Now, that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean it's morally correct. But it does mean something has to change in the thinking on both sides for both parties involved. And that can be hard to stomach because of the nature of the act that occurred, of course. But if you can look at that under that idea that both have thinking that needs to be switched, you can have compassion for both. So it's not changing. It's interesting because it's not changing where you are in that how to say it, on that line, right? One end is this, one end is that. It's not putting yourself in a different place here. It's stepping out of that thinking entirely. It's changing your thinking entirely into something new. That's what needs to happen. He who has conquered weakness and has put away all selfish thoughts belongs neither to oppressor nor oppressed. He is free. So when we conquer that selfishness, and remember, the oppressor can be any of our addictions or dependencies, can't it? Right? This oppressor can be someone's inability to stay off their phone. This could be someone's inability to stop playing video games. That could be the oppressor. Okay? So we're not talking about necessarily the act of slavery, but the mindset that goes along with oppressor and oppressed people, right? So when we get rid of it, when we get rid of our weakness and put away our selfish thoughts, so our weakness is our selfishness and our self-centeredness, when we get rid of those things, there's freedom, true freedom on the other side of that. Real freedom on the other side. A man can only rise, conquer, and achieve by lifting up his thoughts. He can only remain weak and abject and miserable by refusing to lift up his thoughts. So the only way to actually achieve great things or achieve greatness of any sense is to change your thinking. That's the only way. Changing your thoughts, changing what you think about, changing how you think about things. This is a much bigger thing than just hoping the world treats you right sometime. You'll be miserable if you think about that. You can only rise, conquer, and achieve by lifting up your thoughts. Before a man can achieve anything, even in worldly things, so there's more than just worldly things, let's remember that, he must lift his thoughts above slavish animal indulgence, right? Lift his thoughts above slavish animal indulgence. So we're talking about doing something different than just making yourself feel comfortable, doing something different than just making yourself feel pleasure or high or distracted. We become slaves to those things because it lets us escape a situation we don't want to be a part of anymore. But those things will actually deter us from the growth we need to make, from the changes of thought that we need to have. Okay? It's very important to realize this. You must lift your thoughts above slavish animal indulgence. And it says he must not, in order to succeed, give up all animality and selfishness by any means, but a portion must be at least sacrificed. You've got to sacrifice these things in your life that don't serve you, that don't allow you that growth. A man whose first thought is bestial indulgence could neither think clearly nor plan methodically, right? If all you're thinking about is what I'm going to do next to make myself feel good, to get what I want to get, to make myself feel comfortable, or to get my sense of security from outside of me, if that's all you're thinking about, you can't plan. You can plan no farther than just your next day or that night. He could not find and develop his latent resources and would fail in any undertaking. If that's all you can think about, you're never going to continue to press forward. You're never going to continue to grow in the way you need to grow. You're never going to be what you might secretly wish to be. You get lost in the distraction of life. You get lost in the mix of pleasure and comfort. When if you would just allow yourself to be uncomfortable for a little bit and sink back to reality, you can change so many things so quickly. Now, this next point is very honest, and I like it because it's honest. And it kind of hit me. I remember reading this one of the first times I read it, and I was like, it's so obvious. It's one of those things that's so obvious, but I didn't believe it, or I didn't really fully have the ability to articulate it until I read it this way. So, not having commenced to manfully control his thoughts, he is not in a position to control affairs and to adopt serious responsibilities. He is not fit to act independently and stand alone, but he is limited only by the thoughts which he chooses. If you can't control your own thinking, and you can't control your own involvement in these selfish, animalistic desires and these pleasure-seeking behaviors and these distractions, why would anyone trust you with anything further than yourself? Right? Why would you be given the responsibility of a family head, or the responsibility of a community leader, or the responsibility of anything past that? But there's so many of us that say, if I just had that, all would be okay inside of me. We reach outside of ourselves for these things when the reality of it is, if we would just stop pursuing externally the things we need to look internally to change, we would find that peace and serenity we all have been pursuing for our whole lives. But we always think it's outside of us. If I was just more respected in my community, if I had just this much power over people, or if my kids would just, listen to me, anything like that. But you can't control your drinking. You can't control the amount of money you're spending on things you don't need. You can't control you can't maintain a romantic relationship because you're constantly cheating or flirting or whatever it is. If you cannot control yourself, you don't deserve more responsibility. It's a truth. It's a very simple truth. But it was a long time coming. It took a long time, and it was a hard-learned lesson for me. I'll say that much. Now, this is an awesome line. There can be no progress, no achievement without sacrifice. A man's worldly success will be in the measure that he sacrifices his confused animal thoughts and fixes his mind on the development of his plans and the strengthening of his resolution and self-reliance. Okay. Now, sacrifice. Sacrifice. We have to let things go that have served us. Behaviors that have always served us. That could be anger, sadness. That could be pleasure-seeking behaviors like we've been talking about. That could be self-pity and anxiety and fear. We have to let these things go. We have to sacrifice these old self-serving behaviors in order to let something new come in and practice something different and grow differently. Okay? Sacrifice those things, and the success will be in the measure of those sacrifices that you have made. The amount of your success is directly proportionate to the amount of things you sacrificed. The amount of behaviors you sacrificed that served you. That has a direct linkage to how successful you are in your life, to the achievements that you make in your life. Those petty little selfish indulgences that we hold on to, saying it's not hurting anybody. Well, it's hurting you. It's holding you back. Those little things could be and I'm not going to try to list anything for that because it's a plethora of them. For me, it's books. I like buying books and reading. Sometimes I need to stop and take more action. My study's already filling up with enough books as it is. I don't need to go crazy anymore. There's certain sacrifices I still have to make that are holding me back. Now, the higher he lifts his thoughts and the more manly, upright, and righteous he becomes, the greater will be his success and the more blessed and enduring will be his achievements. So the higher he lifts his thoughts, the more manly, upright, and righteous he becomes, right? When you start sacrificing these thoughts and these behaviors, and you start focusing on these larger, more important principles and virtues like just honesty, kindness, steadfastness, strength, forgiveness, love, when you start practicing these other things that don't have that immediate gratification piece to them to serve you, you become more resolute. You become more upright. And he says manly here, more matured. This is as a man thinketh, more manly, more in control of your emotions and in control of your person. Okay? And that will lead to greater success and more blessed and enduring will be his achievements. Like, these are things that I have direct experience with. The maturation process for me has been one that's happened almost primarily in my sobriety, in my recovery, and my spiritual journey. I had to let go of so many old behaviors and so many old thought processes that didn't serve me, or that served me at one point and might still serve me, but they're actually holding me back from the life I wanted to live, from being the person that I wanted to be, achieving the goals in my life that I wanted to achieve. The universe does not favor the greedy, dishonest, and vicious, although on the mere surface it may sometimes appear to. It helps the honest, the magnanimous, the virtuous. All the great teachers of the ages have declared this in varying forms, and to prove and know it, a man has but to persist in making himself more and more virtuous by lifting up his thoughts. That's what I was talking about. The more you practice virtue, which are these morals and principles, and step out of your selfishness and your self-centeredness and your self-indulgences and your self-pity, when you step out of those things and practice this, regardless of knowing or not how this will benefit you, or if it even will benefit you, you're just practicing these new virtues and these new morals on faith, right? When you do that, and you walk that path in faith, and you start to know that this is proven to be true, you will get different achievements, you will get a different sense of self, you will get a different level of authenticity, you will get a different level of respect for yourself, and therefore respect from others. It's the faith of taking a new path that you don't see how it's going to work. But trust me, you'll end up in places you didn't know you were going to end up, but it will be the most amazing journey you've ever had. That's been my experience. So the universe helps the honest, the magnanimous, and the virtuous. And all the great teachers to prove and know it, a man has but to persist in making himself more and more virtuous by lifting up his thoughts. So when you start letting these thoughts go, you stop the behaviors, right? This is how it goes. You stop the behaviors, you see your thoughts, you change the thoughts, you see your intention. Usually it's a selfish, a self-centered, fear-based intention. You change that to a love and a service and a selfless intention. And then you practice new thinking on that intention. Then you practice new behaviors on that thinking. Everything changes. Everything changes. Now he talks about different types of achievements here. Intellectual achievements are the result of thought consecrated to the search for knowledge or for the beautiful and the true in life and nature. Such achievements may be sometimes connected with vanity and ambition, but they are not the outcome of those characteristics. They are the natural outgrowth of long, arduous effort and pure, unselfish thoughts. Sometimes we like to look at somebody that has something we might admire, and our opinion of that individual is that they're a bad person. Now, if it's a genuinely good thing that they have, or it's a genuinely earned position, maybe, there must be something good, because the universe doesn't reward the bad. It just doesn't. Any gain from negative thinking and behavior is soon lost and turned upon themselves. It happens all the time. So I've taken it upon myself to look at people that I might judge, knowing that I shouldn't be judging or condemning, and say that person doesn't deserve what they have. But this is a just world. This is a just universe. So there must be something that person is doing right, even though they might be vain, this says, even though they might have some, what was the other? It said vain and ambition, an unhealthy ambition. Then they might have those things, but their position or their societies or societal, their place in society, there was a lot of good that went into it first. right? There was art, he says, long, arduous effort and pure and unselfish thoughts. Do not just always assume someone is successful because of their negative qualities that you've observed. It's not how this works. Spiritual achievements are the consummation of holy aspirations. He who lives constantly in the conception of noble and lofty thoughts, who dwells upon all that is pure and unselfish, will, as surely as the sun reaches its zenith and the moon its full, will become wise and noble in character and rise into the position of influence and blessedness. So, spiritual achievements come from thinking about spiritual things, holy aspirations, noble and lofty thoughts, dwells upon pure and unselfish. So when you think about these things, what you think about is directing the achievements you're going towards. It seems obvious, but take a look at your thoughts. Really look at them. What are they? Are they positive in any way? Are they healthy in any way? Or are they all selfish and self-serving and fearful? You have to be honest with yourself when you're looking at this stuff and doing this work and trying to change your life. So, for intellectual achievements, it's thoughts focused on the search for knowledge and beautiful and truth in life, which is kind of similar to what Emerson talks about. And then for spiritual achievements, it's noble and lofty thoughts about pure and unselfish. And you get the results of those things. This isn't rocket science. Well, maybe, it can be rocket science, actually. If that's what you want to learn, if that's what you want to achieve. But your achievements are a direct result of your thinking. Like, my achievement was I ended up in a really rough spot in life because of what I was thinking about. The results and the achievements that I got in life were a direct reflection of my thought process and what I was and my intentions. For me, that was jails, that was inpatients and detoxes and addiction. Direct result of my thinking. Achievement of whatever kind is the crown effort, the diadem of thought, the jeweled crown. By the aid of self-control, resolution, purity, and righteousness and well-directed thought, a man ascends. Okay, let's list those out again. So your achievements are the result of your thinking, of the thoughts you entertain, which drive the actions, which leads to the achievement. Okay, that's how this works. And those are aided, right? So by the aid of self-control, resolution, purity, righteousness, and well-directed thought, a man ascends. So you're ascending into these achievements, you're reaching these achievements is from self-control, resolution, purity, righteousness, and well-directed thought. So you go through this process regularly. You look at the behaviors, then your thoughts, and then your intentions, and then you change it all the way up, right? Because if you don't change the thoughts, when you stop an action and you don't change the thoughts, it's an only temporary stop of an action. Because if the thinking remains the same, the action will happen again. It's like alcoholics who just stop drinking and they don't change their thinking. They're going to be miserable and pick up a drink again. Almost guaranteed. So if you want to ascend, it's those traits I listed. But by the aid of animality, indolence, impurity, corruption, and confusion of thought, a man descends. Right? Those are the things that bring us down. Animality means those animal indulgences. Indolence, not wanting to do anything. Lazy. Impurity, just lustful, selfish thoughts. Corruption, pretty self-explanatory. Confusion, right? Indecisiveness. You'll descend. It'll destroy you. A man may rise, this is important to remember. A man may rise to high success in the world and even to lofty altitudes in the spiritual realm, and again descend into weakness and wretchedness by allowing arrogant, selfish, and corrupt thoughts to take possession of him. So let me be clear. You can achieve these things, but you won't keep them if you don't maintain your spiritual practices, meaning you don't maintain your selflessness and your service mentality, your loving intentions. If you start being selfish with your achievements, if you start to be arrogant and boastful and prideful, if you start to be corrupt and using them for your achievements and you're standing for just selfish ends, you'll just end up right back at the bottom, usually worse, because the falls, you're falling from a lot higher place, so you can go a whole lot lower. Trust me, I've seen it happen, and it's happened to me. Corrupt thoughts to take possession of him. So be prepared. Victory is attained by right thought can only be maintained by watchfulness. You have to have discipline. You have to have discipline. You can't just reach an achievement, reach a goal, and then stop, because you'll lose it again. That's not how this works. A life is kept positive and good by maintenance, by intention, by being dutiful, dedicated, and disciplined. As much as we don't like to hear that, we want to be lazy and just, we did it once, it'll be fine. That's not how this goes. That's how the 12-step rooms teach us that. When we look at 10, 11, and 12 in the steps. But there's a lot of places, constant educational courses for those in therapy and psychotherapy, constant initiatives to grow and learn and to improve and perfect and purify, right? This purification process. All right. Maintained by watchful. Many give way when success is assured and rapidly fall back into failure. Some people, they call it, like in some schools, senior slide. Senior will get halfway through their senior year and they'll stop doing anything because they think, oh, well, I'm going to make it anyway. They won't fail me. Blah, blah, blah. That happens all the time in all aspects, in all areas of life. When you believe your success is assured and you stop, just because you were only doing that to get something, and then you're really wanting to maintain your selfishness or your self-centeredness, like you stop drinking, then your family gets back together and you get them back and you start drinking again. Seems insane, right? You want to buy a house, so you stop spending money. So you buy a house and then you start spending the money irresponsibly again. Then you can't afford to repair the house. Can't afford to maintain the mortgage. This happens. This happens. You can slide back into failure. No one is guaranteed a permanent success. Success and achievements are only maintained by continuing to work a spiritual program, by continuing to live virtuously and not by principle, and by continuing to lift and raise your character. All achievements, whether in the business, intellectual, or spiritual world, are the result of definitely directed result. I skipped a line. Definitely directed thought. Are governed by the same law and are of the same method. The only difference lies in the object of attainment. So, if you want to achieve in business, you use this process of looking at your behaviors, looking at your thoughts, looking at your intentions, and apply it in a business perspective. If you want to do it in the spiritual world, do it in the spiritual world. You want to do it in the intellectual world, do it in the intellectual world. But it's all done the same way. That process is the same in all areas of life, in all perspectives, in all achievements you'd like to go for. It's a dedication of yourself to them and a sacrifice of selfish and self-centered behaviors that do not serve you, that actually impede your growth and impede your ability to progress towards them. All right? Same process, different achievements. You get to choose. Now, I love this last line. He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much. He who would attain highly must sacrifice greatly. It is in direct proportion to your willingness to sacrifice. Never forget it. Success and achievement doesn't come easily. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to take steps that require faith and trust. And when you can do that, your life will change more than you could ever imagine. So, all right. Well, there we go. The next chapter is Vision and Ideals. I love that chapter. I'll go ahead and I'll put that reading up next weekend, and then another video response 2 weeks from now, of course, on that one. Loved this chapter. I hope everyone else enjoyed it, and I hope y'all really get as much out of this book as I do, and it's changed my life in so many ways. So thank y'all for jumping on, and until next time, thanks.